Welcome to AI Role Models, a podcast from One Strategy Studio that goes beyond the hype to explore how real leaders are transforming their businesses with artificial intelligence. In each episode, I'll sit down with pioneers from the world's leading brands who are reimagining marketing, insights, and innovation with AI. But we're not here to talk about theoretical possibilities. These are candid conversations about the real challenges, unexpected victories, and practical lessons learned from implementing AI in organizations. Here's today's episode. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. We are here after a great summer break for another episode of One Strategy's podcast, AI Heroes. I'm joined today. Our guest is the legendary Tina Tonielli. Tina, good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Dave.
Fantastic to have you on the show. Tina has decades of experience in consumer healthcare insights. She's worked on some incredible brands that you'll all know and love, Advil, Centrum. I guess they're brands that you love, or never brands that you want to be reaching for. So when you're, if you're using Advil, you've probably got a headache or something like that. And so, Tina, great to have you on the show. Really excited to kind of chat with you about kind of AI and how you're seeing it play a role in consumer healthcare insights. I think before we kind of dive in, we're going to cover off a bunch of topics today, looking a little bit about the evolution of AI in healthcare, this internal versus external AI strategy. I know you've been doing some really interesting stuff on both sides of that fence, looking at practical implementation and how you think about measuring impact and ROI. So lots to cover. Let's dig in. But before we kind of get into those great topics, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you kind of first got involved with insights for consumer healthcare and kind of AI as well?
Yeah, sure. So the quick story on me is that I started in marketing. So I always joke with folks that I'm a marketer at heart. I spent my first 5 years working on brands in the marketing side. And then I moved over into the insight side. And then I've done insights and analytics and led teams in insights and analytics for decades, as you said, in the consumer healthcare and pharma space. And so some really great brands I've had the pleasure of working on and the privilege of working on, and opportunities to help people grow those brands by understanding consumers. But I think the thing, Dave, I'm really passionate about is about unlocking growth and doing that for both businesses and people. And for myself as well. People know that I talk a lot about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And to me, growth mindset is the number one growth driver of everything, really. And that's really what led me to AI, and where I jumped in head first with AI, honestly, because I think for me, the learning was when I look back on e-commerce and digital marketing and sort of when that came in, I was a little skeptical, if I'm honest, when that first came in, especially being in healthcare, because consumers weren't jumping online to buy their headache products. So I kind of let that slide a little. And this time I was like, you know what? I'm going to get in there first, and I'm going to learn about LLMs and GPTs and all about this AI, because I want to be on the front versus on the back of it this time.
Yep. And
so that was really the impetus for me, was being in that growth mindset and saying, I want to be on the front of this one and not on the back of it.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of kind of when you think about kind of getting that growth mindset and being on the front end and diving in, I guess, what were your initial reactions when AI kind of emerged? Where did you start that journey? Like, what was your kind of aha moment as part of that?
I would say a couple of things. I think I have a lot of thoughts, but as you can imagine, a lot of feelings also. But one of the things for me is I get really frustrated when people, like, leadership tends to come in and say, we need to do AI. And it's like, we've been doing machine learning AI for a really long time. So like marketing research analytics has been doing AI for a really long time. And so when they come in and they start just talking about AI, we need to automate things, and that's what we need to do, they don't understand that we've been automating things for 10 years with machine learning. So for me, the first thing I tended to feel, if I'm being honest, was a little bit of frustration of people not taking the time to really understand the nuances of what AI is. So that's first. And then second, when I looked at ChatGPT and I started to explore it a little bit, I felt excited intimidated,
Hmm.
definitely. But excited, probably more than intimidated. I think in the sort of big data area, I probably felt more intimidated than excited. On this
Yeah.
side, I definitely felt more excited than intimidated. And I also felt incredibly determined. So back to that thing that I said before, it was like, I have the opportunity now to get in and learn, and I'm
Yeah.
going to go do it. And that's all it's going to be. So that was really how I felt when it came out.
And then the excitement stemmed from the ability to do more, be more efficient. Like what was it that was stemming that excitement, and with it when the intimidation, what was driving that?
Yeah. So I think the excitement was a combination for me of both the possibility,
Mm.
and I don't know if it's the probability or the tools that are required to make that happen. So I would say, like in big data, you had to learn Python, you had to learn really complex code to be able to unlock that possibility. I think from what I was learning initially, people might use words like prompt engineering, and there is an aspect of prompt engineering that is an art that you can get even better results.
For sure.
But just to start learning about large language models and getting into generative AI, you basically need to be an effective communicator. Like
Hmm.
that's it. You have to
Yeah.
take your time and think about what you're asking and being an effective communicator. Well, I am that's generally what I do pretty well, is being an effective communicator. So
Yeah.
that was where I was excited, honestly, was hearing all of the possibilities of generative AI and the things that it was able to do, and believing that because I'm an effective communicator, as are, by the way, many insights professionals
Oh,
are
yeah.
effective communicators. I felt like there was an opportunity for me and my team also to really step in and lead, because you don't have to learn really impossible and very complicated code. You just jump in and you start learning as you go.
Yeah, I think that accessibility is often overlooked, and it truly is, yeah, leveling the playing field. And as you say, so many of us in the insights community, communication is a great part of who we are, what we've done, why we've chose to go into this space. So yeah, really can be a superpower. And where you talked about the intimidation, was that more like there's so much we can do? How do we prioritize, or was it, we've talked a lot on this show about AI's role in changing the shape and the landscape of insights and what skills will be important. But yeah, talk a bit more about where the intimidation came from.
Well, I mean, I think there's probably two aspects to the intimidation for me. So one aspect was, if leadership sort of caught wind of what we were doing, it could get blown into you have to go KPI this and make it an
Mhm.
efficiency play. And
Yeah.
to me, the real possibility and opportunity of generative AI, which I'm sure we'll talk about more later, is not in efficiency, it's in transformation and effectiveness.
Yeah.
Efficiency could be part of it, but it's not the only piece of it. And when you only look at that, you miss the bigger picture. So I was a little nervous and intimidated that if I jumped in too far, I would make noise and I'd get leadership involved, and then we'd lose a lot of the potential of it. So that was the first piece. And then the other piece was just because nobody knows the right way to use generative AI.
Hmm.
I was intimidated that I was going to do something wrong.
Yeah.
It was the whole, like, I don't want to do something wrong. And as a leader of a decent sized team, I didn't want to do something wrong and role model something wrong for them.
Yeah.
And so that was the intimidation, but I kind of flipped that and went, nobody knows what they're doing. So if we
Yeah.
all kind of go in on an equal playing field and say we're learning together, and we need to constantly share that learning together, again, back to that growth mindset, to me, that helps reduce that tension and that anxiety and that sort of overall intimidation.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way you've created space for you and the team to have that experimental mindset and that approach. And I do think sometimes from an insights perspective, we can be overly focused on, right, well, is this right, is this wrong, is this methodology perfect, or etc. So yeah, it's creating space for the team to experiment, having that growth mindset, I think is absolutely key. And the pace of change we continue to see is so fast now. So even
You're not
what
done.
even what was best practices maybe 12 months ago have evolved and improved, and people have found more ways to get more out of models and more exciting ways to do that. So thinking about the entry of AI becoming more mainstream, particularly into insights and consumer healthcare. How have you seen consumer research evolve over the past 18 months, kind of in your specific industry?
So what I've seen is a lot of suppliers jumping in and just sort of jumping in and doing a lot of personas. There's a ton of that work, I would say, that's happening right now.
Yep.
I was to pick one thing that's being done most frequently, it's the sort of syndicated respondents, personas. Everybody's doing that.
Yep.
Also, everybody, I think, is doing sort of the automated moderator work. So we're kind of seeing those two pieces, I think, most prevalent in the space. I don't know that what I'm not seeing as much, and again, this goes back to the efficiency versus effectiveness, is everybody coming in super thoughtfully in the way they're doing it. So there's some people who are being really thoughtful about how they're building the personas, how they're building the syndicated respondents. So they're bringing that thoughtfulness and the methodological thinking of market research into it. And I think the folks who really are able to pull together the idea of technology and thoughtfulness and the art and science of market research are actually able to bring some really interesting things to the table. But I think if you're rushing to get your technology out and not taking your time to get it done right, that's the trap that I've seen a number of people fall into.
Yeah, and I think you've seen that obviously across the spectrum. There's so many technology companies now in the space. Everybody's rushing. I was at Quirks recently and IIX, and you kind of only have to wander around the exhibition hall for a few minutes, and it's AI, and everyone's got to, and I get it, everyone's got to have a flavor and addition. But I think those that are being more thoughtful with the implementation, because I think one of the things AI gives us is it's very easy to get to 80%, which can be a good breakthrough, but actually being kind of more thoughtful and thinking about kind of where does this need to look through, because it's always the last 20% of the project. And you're seeing it already, like people are vibe coding very AI moderators or whatever they might be, and you can get kind of part of the way there. I'm curious, I guess, what are some of the unique challenges specific to healthcare that you faced when kind of maybe implementing AI compared to kind of some of the other industries?
So it's interesting because I've talked to folks in some other industries that I thought would have an easier time, so to speak, than I thought we would have. And it was interesting because I would say when I look at Haleon as an example, I think Haleon jumped in really fast and really aggressively into this space. And I was really proud of them for doing that. Well, like probably a year and a half ago, I was having conversations with some other companies, some financial services companies, one just standard CPG company that didn't have any kind of healthcare situation going on. And we were and a retailer. We were miles ahead of all three of them in terms of the way that we had started implementing generative AI and sort of pulling it through into the business. So from that perspective, I think some of it is the regulatory environment, but a lot of it is the tolerance of leadership for risk, or it's more about the unknown than it is the risk, so to speak. Like it's the unknown risk, if I would say it correctly, because there's sort of the healthcare risk where we have the AI, the events, the AE events that we have to report and things of the sort, and being careful about patient data. There's those kind of regulatory risks. And then there's the risks of sort of AI and not knowing what you don't know. And I know there was a situation where people were accidentally uploading, private information to public servers. So there's that kind of, how do you manage those pieces? And I think that if a company is really smart about it, they can get in and make sure that they've got a really good way of doing it. And I think Haleon did a really nice job of that, in spite of being in the industry that it is.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think as you say, that comes back to leadership's approach to this. Sounds like certainly at Haleon it was very forward thinking, without, as you say, it getting boxed into this. What's the KPI and efficiency? How many? What's the change here? So it was both the kind of the best of both worlds, kind of cautious exploration within the confines, but without trying to kind of operationalize it day one and look at that. The kind of segues nicely into this kind of internal versus external AI strategies thing, because, I mean, I was at your AI day, I think it must have been probably almost a year ago now, correct?
Yeah, it was. It was a year ago.
I think it was
like 2 years ago, but yeah, it was a year ago.
I think I was 3 weeks into working at one strategy, and you
Yes.
guys did a great day with a lot of your, broad teammates as well as partners you were working with. So maybe talk a little bit about how you've thought about, what you've done on the internal side of things, internal tooling, things that you've built, because every company we speak to, they're blending kind of external suppliers with internal resources, and there's lots of people kind of fighting for that kind of owning the AI strategy. Where does this sit? So you're seeing the rise of AI councils that are kind of trying to be cross-functional and have more control over everything. So yeah, talk to us a little bit about kind of your experiences there.
Yeah, so I think that for us, there's the sort of the AI tools, right? And then there's sort of the business strategy. What I feel good about from a Haleon perspective is, as you saw the launch of our strategy publicly, I think it was last year, or maybe it was just in July. It was last year in July, and it was really about sort of what are the business priorities. So I think we tend to look a little more, or Haleon has looked more at the enablers of the business, and AI being more, how do you think of it as an enabler versus AI being a strategy? And I think that, to me, is the single best thing to do, and one of the traps that I think companies have fallen into. And even, Dave, as you talked about quirks, I think quirks tended to be AI. And to me, it's not about AI. It's about what is the business problem that you're looking to solve that AI can make a huge difference for you with. And I think you guys have done a really nice job of articulating that. And that's one of the reasons that I've had lots of great conversations with you guys, because you understand it as an enabler versus it as a technology. So when I think about companies, I think there's a lot of companies that use the Microsoft. Oh my gosh, I'm having a senior moment for a second, Dave.
Microsoft Copilot?
Yes, thank you. I'm like, I know it starts with a C. I need to take my Centrum. Thank you, Centrum. The Microsoft Copilot is a big one that people sort of have as a plugin. So I think people are trying out different things. So having Microsoft Copilot, having like an internal LLM that has all of your sort of company stuff in it, and a firewall to the outside so you can upload stuff and manage it internally. What I've seen most often is the sort of ChatGPT separation. So like, we're not going to play in that space. If you want to do it in your personal time, that's great, but like, do not cross those lines with the company. And so, and then I think there's the supplier connection. And what I've seen with suppliers, interestingly, is for me, I always think about it as the agentic future. And I just love saying agentic.
It's a great word.
I just think it sounds really smart. And I feel like you guys were doing agents before anybody knew what agents were. And so I feel like, to me, if you can create a unique job that, generative AI can do, that you can own sort of that agent or that job and deliver it uniquely, that's the outsource that I think companies would want to do. It's harder to say, hey, I'm going to have you manage all of my AI stuff versus here's the business problem I'm trying to solve, that you have an AI agent or agents or system that can enable that for me. And that, to me, is where the external piece is better. The trying to manage our knowledge and trying to synthesize our data is one of the ones that, or having saying, oh, well, we have a ton of data and we can synthesize all this data for you. That's not, to me, that's not something that's going to be sustainable for the future.
I mean, that's always been an age-old problem, right? Companies have so much data. How do you break down silos, but then keep the security and privacy? Like it's complex for sure, and kind of trying to find external partners that can deal with that. As you say, I think the future maybe of the external AI is how do you augment your team with AI from external partners that are really dialed into, as you say, specific tasks, specific functions.
Yep.
Yes, they can maybe leverage some of your pre-existing data or whatever that might be, or have access to certain things. But much harder, as you say, to kind of do that. When you think about kind of the practical implementation, we talked a bit about kind of synthetic respondents a little bit and what's happening there, virtual personas. How do you think about maintaining that kind of human element of insights and research that's so important, both on talking to respondents and actually talking to real people, and also ensuring the human expertise within the insights teams, marketing teams, again, is kind of not lost?
Yeah. So for me, I'm going to break it down to something really simple is how I think about it. So I think about sort of the process of AI getting involved in whatever you're doing. And I think whatever it's doing for you, I think you have to maintain critical thinking up front from a human.
Yeah.
And that has to be really sharp, really smart critical thinking. And by the way, if you were involving AI or not involving AI, if you were going out and just doing machine learning, you should have really good critical thinking up front. So to me, that taking the time to get really good critical thinking up front before you do anything, slowing down to speed up, so to speak, that's really critical. I think also some kind of a checkpoint in the middle where you have a check-in on what you're seeing from the model, from the agents, from the model, from whatever it is, and say, hey, do I need to course correct, or is this going in the right direction? And then to me, then the output, and taking that output and having an interpretation of it. So if it is I would call it like the creative implementation or activation. Activation to me is like, how do you take that and drive business decisions with it?
Yeah.
And really thinking about it from that perspective, it's almost like the stewards of the AI agent for the process. I think that's, to me, where the most value is added. And again, as a client, I think about that as no matter who we partner with, whether it's an AI agent or it's an incredibly strategic business partner or an outsourced, market research partner, that is the role that we historically have needed to play and should have played. And that's the role we should play now. I think if people aren't playing that role and they go, hey, I'm going to half-ass the question, right? And I'm going to do this really fast. Let me just throw something at you and then hope at the end and then take the end and plug and play.
Yeah.
Everything's going to look the same. And I think you see the difference when you look at LinkedIn. It has changed so much, I think, over the last probably year. The feed looks, you can see the generic, you can see that it's generic, right? And I think the risk is if you outsource too much of that creative thinking, critical thinking upfront and creative interpretation at the end, if you don't have that real material value added, everything's going to look the same and you're not going to have any competitive differentiation. So the people who are really putting in the time in both of those places, to me, are the ones that are breaking through.
Yeah, and I love the way you kind of frame that. The core fundamentals shouldn't change because of AI. The critical thinking, the creativity on the back end. What are we doing to tell the results? I think what it does enable us to do is to be more iterative. And there's the days of the external partner going off and doing 6 weeks of work and then coming back and being like, oh, maybe this brief wasn't quite right, or oh, now we know this. I think what it is enabling is a lot more iteration. I think it's also enabling us a lot more to take outputs and create various different modalities of that output to be more engaging, which would have, again, took time. But yeah, as you say, the fundamentals haven't changed. I think we've got to be really thoughtful about where can we leverage it for most impact. I'm curious, like, in terms of what's been your biggest learning or surprise in terms of kind of implementing kind of AI in the insights work? Was it something that kind of truly shocked you, or you kind of was a massive takeaway for you?
I'm gonna have to have more than one because I always have to have more than one.
I'll let you have two. Okay, you can have two.
Okay, so I'm gonna say two. I'm going to say my number one, and we were sort of talking about this a little bit before, is that it's not a roadmap. It's not a you're done situation. It is a capability that you're going to need to build as a muscle for your organization. And so it's funny because on our team at Helion, we had a group called AI Avengers. So it's funny that we have AI heroes here. So shout out to Teresa Carrera. So she's the leader of the AI Avengers at Helion for the Insights team. And so the goal of the AI Avengers there was to keep an eye out to the outside and then keep connected inside so you can always be learning from each other and then always be scaling what you're learning. So the idea of how do you keep that, I hate to use the word flywheel, but how do you keep that system going and not say, which we always fall into that trap of, hey, we're going to crawl, walk, run, and then we're going to run and we're going to be running with generative AI. And somebody talked once about like generative AI is a foundational technology like light bulbs, right? Like the electricity, not light bulbs, but electricity. So you don't say like, we're going to crawl, walk, run with electricity. You say like, we're going to learn how to get the most value out of electricity. And so I think to me, that's the biggest aha is we have to think about it differently and think about it as a muscle that we're building and not a roadmap that we're going to achieve, so to speak. So that's the first big aha for me. And then I think the second big aha for me was it's not as intimidating as I thought it would be, but you also have to be careful. Because I think you can fall down a trap of like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then you start like getting sucked into the belief system of AI. And that's probably more on a personal level. I think there's a lot of people that have gotten sucked into that on a personal level of somebody once described ChatGPT as the golden retriever of LLMs. And I can't get that into my head now because it truly is like it answers you in the way that it thinks you want it to answer you. And so if you have to keep that in mind as you're working with LLMs and talking to them and looking for solutions, it's predicting what it thinks you want it to say. So if you have that in mind and say, I know that whatever I'm putting into most LLMs is giving me back what it wants, what it thinks I want it to say, how do you make sure that you take that bias into consideration? So it's probably, Dave, it's really a lot easier to use than I thought it would be, but you have to watch out for that bias. And that's the other surprise for me of once I started using it, I got caught up in the bias without realizing it. But now that I realized it, it's a really good, I'm able to sort of use it more with more accuracy and a little bit more objectively.
I agree with that. I mean, I think prompt engineering, as you mentioned, whilst things have changed in terms of what people need to know. You think having a reference to how the models were trained, how they want to use, making sure that you kind of take that into account. As the amount of learners like, oh, that is an excellent idea, Dave.
That's a really good point, Tina. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Give me one. I'm just trying to lose this echo, but thinking about, I know you said you didn't want to measure impact and ROI from a leadership perspective, but it always kind of as you think about kind of driving towards business outcomes, there's always someone that's going to want to measure that. So if we don't rush towards that, and we did take more of a kind of learning approach, maybe you think teams should be setting up a framework to kind of think about the impact and ROI that the AI is having.
So I think you absolutely should measure efficiency with it. Like if there is an opportunity for efficiency, if you think there is, I think there's also cost savings for how we do things. So you can do things in a more iterative fashion. So for example, I love the iterative example you gave, like if you had done that thing that you're able to do in an iterative manner, you would have had to pay a whole lot more money to do that 6 iterations with an agency and the time. So you've got time savings and cost savings. It's going to look the same, right? So it might still take you 4 weeks. I'm making this up, but if it took you 4 weeks to do it before and it takes you 4 weeks to do it now, you're doing it in 4 weeks, but those 4 weeks are in 12 weeks and a whole lot more money. It's like previous time. So it's like AI time almost has to be measured differently in some cases. And so I think if you can look at it that way and find creative ways to have that conversation, Dave, I think that's really important. And I think also measuring effectiveness when you can, like this is how, here's what the concept scores looked like before. Here's what the concept scores are looking like now. Here's what my communication scores are looking like. Ultimately, my hope would be if we're using it like electricity and actually lighting things up, ultimately your solutions will be more effective in the long run. And so hopefully that kind of measurement will ultimately work, and people need a little bit of patience. But I do think having your problem clearly identified at the beginning and having a clear learning come out of it, that to me is the minimal KPI. That needs to be the minimum of what you can do. And if you're able to be clear on your problem and learn something that you share with other people, I think that at this point in time is a really good learning.
I'd agree completely with that. Kind of thinking about the future, and obviously we've come so far over the last 18 months, and it's hard to truly predict where we're going to be with every week something new, capabilities comes out, models are getting stronger. It's incredible to see. But where do you see this heading over the next 12 to 24 months? And guess what are you most excited about, kind of in terms of the application of AI?
That's a really good question, Dave, because like I said, it feels like it was 5 years ago and it was 1 year ago that we had. And I think works year to year, it was wildly different. I think that what I think is going to just keep growing now is this idea of the agents. I think as people figure out how to use agents, they'll be able to outsource more jobs to AI. Like, for example, I need to figure out how to book a doctor's appointment or do certain things that require an agent to do it, versus now it's like, hey, can you help me plan my grocery list for the week? Here's, those kinds of things. But that's very much like a transaction that I'm doing with something versus a job. So I can see in the next 18 months it going from a little bit more into the jobs to do versus the transactions to do. And so again, back to that, what I see in the insights area is I think the more that suppliers can think about the jobs that partners, that client partners need help with versus shoving technology at them. I think that's the important thing, is people have to think about jobs and needs, and how do you solve those with AI?
Yeah, I think the next 24 months are going to be incredibly exciting. I agree that this agentic approach we'll see more and more, and I think the key to that is that these agents are able to access various parts of data. You talked about booking doctor's appointments or whatever it might be. Again, that the agent, these personalized agents in our personal life, having access to, we're starting to see this OpenAI access to your credit card and your wallet, access to your calendar, having all of that knowledge, and essentially, being a true, assistant that's knowledgeable about not just the kind of the world, but your personal world and what's going on and what matters to you, what your preferences are, and things like that. So I think that's going to be incredible to see, particularly even from, the buyer journey, and we're starting to see, search play less a role in
I agree with that completely.
We were talking just before the show, I hurt my back, and the first thing I did was went into ChatGPT, asked for advice around stretching, but also was like, recommend what is the best pain relief gel. Like, before that would have been a Google query, would have been some articles, maybe some AdWords links. Now I've got, ChatGPT really breaking that down for me and making product recommendations. So I think that's going to be a huge change. So obviously you got on this journey early, you had that growth mindset. Fundamentals remain important. They're some of the key takeaways from today. But I guess if you were talking to other kind of insights leaders in your position, what would you want them to kind of take away about kind of this kind of AI journey, what would be your advice to your peers?
So my number one piece of advice would be jump in. The water's fine. And I think there's still insights professionals out there who are like intimidated by the idea of it. And I would say to those folks, I would say, instead of Googling something the next time or just typing in your search bar, go into ChatGPT. And that's what I've said to everybody is try it instead of search next time. Because to your point, Dave, I think everybody who uses it instead of search 9 times out of 10 will go to it instead of search in the future, because it's just a way more precise search instrument for you. So if you start there, I think you can branch out to a lot of other ways that you discover to use it. It's almost like search is the gateway into figuring out other ways to learn it, and it's low risk. So I would say that to the folks who haven't used anything yet, do that. And then to the folks who are already in it, I think the number one thing for us is to stay connected. Because honestly, Dave, even for myself, like I jumped in whole hog last year. And then I swear I took my foot off the gas pedal for like a month and a half. And I was like, what happened? Like it was like a month and a half where I wasn't like listening to all the podcasts and doing all this stuff. And then it was sort of like, I feel like a lot has changed because you have to maintain your diligence, I think, of staying connected to what's happening. So that to me, I think is the other piece that I would advise people is if you're connected, stay connected. Don't assume that because you know a lot up front that you're still connected, because you won't be unless you continue to build that and stay connected.
Definitely. I think that's great advice. It is moving quickly. I think the ability to kind of share with peers, like we're seeing a lot of groups of kind of brand side insights leaders getting together and creating their own groups to discuss this stuff. So definitely, if you want to connect with Tina, you can connect with her easily through LinkedIn. Tina Tonielli. I'm sure she'd love to chat. Tina, this has been fantastic. Really appreciate you being a guest on the show, getting some insight into what you've been doing in the consumer healthcare space, and look forward to hopefully we'll have you back on the show in 12, 18 months. And that will have changed. So thanks again for the show, and we'll speak soon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to AI Role Models. Follow now wherever you get your podcasts to be notified of new episodes. Connect with One Strategy on LinkedIn to join us for live recordings. Don't forget to leave a review, and we can't wait to see you again soon for our next episode.